Right. Thank you for coming all on a Saturday morning to the far out Cyberport. I know it's not easy to come here, so it means you're really dedicated to learn from this event. So thank you all for coming. I'm here today to talk about failure and how I dealt with it. And when Jeffrey first came to me 2 months ago, I was almost a little bit hesitant. I was like, this is a great idea. Let's talk about failure. But at the same time, it is something that's very difficult to share with, because when we experience failure, it's not easy. You will never see me saying like, oh yeah, let's celebrate failure because it's awesome. Because it's not. Failure is really awful, you know? It makes you feel terrible about yourself. It makes you feel almost depressed because you basically lost at something that we were trying to build. And this is what happened to me, and this is what I'm here to talk about, how I actually experienced failure at PhoneJoy. Full disclaimer, I'm not talking about PhoneJoy failing because the company is still around, but I'm talking about how I actually failed as the founder and CEO of the company. If you don't know PhoneJoy is a startup that's been around now for 3 years. They actually have an office right over there. And it's basically a game controller that turns your smartphone into a console. And we launched it earlier this year. And I left actually the company, I don't know, almost half a year ago. And I'm basically here to share some of my experience and how I went through that failure. To me, failure is almost like going through grief. So you experience different stages of how you deal with that failure, and I want to share this experience with you. Success and failure, I think it's very important to look at failure and not just, move on and go to the next best thing, but actually to take a step back and think about the mistakes that we have done and what we can take away from it. Stage 1, shock and surprise. And this actually takes me back to January this year. I would call this almost the worst week of my life because I failed on the company side and also failed personally on my personal life. And it all came together in 1 week. And this is actually very difficult to talk about, and it took me actually quite some overcoming to share this experience with you. So in January this year, PhoneJoy was struggling. We were running out of cash. We had maybe runaway left for 3 months. We were just about to launch our product. We had enough money to launch it, but given the state of hardware you need to produce and you get paid later, usually last, it makes it very difficult to maintain cash flow. And I knew that we had to raise more money, which is why in the months before that I was working very hard towards raising a round. So I was working on financial models. I didn't basically take a vacation for Christmas because to me entrepreneurship didn't know any vacations, right? So I called an investor meeting. The investors were supposed to fly in on Monday. And the weekend before, my girlfriend, my long-term girlfriend, she actually gifted me a staycation in Hong Kong at a nice hotel, which was really nice. She came back from her holiday and she wanted to spend some more time with me. Just the two of us, no PhoneJoy, because she was getting more and more upset of me always putting the company before her. Because PhoneJoy was basically in survival mode. We were trying to survive, we were trying to make this company a success. And when you've been working on your startup for over 2 years, you really put 100, if not 120% behind your startup. Like, you cannot really, it's like your own sacrifice in a way. And during that staycation though, our investors announced that they were coming a day earlier. So they were arriving on a Sunday and they demanded to immediately see me. And I was like, all right, this really sucks. Because I have only this one weekend that I was supposed to spend with my girlfriend, and I couldn't. Because I didn't want to risk upsetting our investors. I also had to kind of please them. And so I was basically on my way out. And then my girlfriend, she confessed to me that she actually betrayed me 2 months before that. Because she said it didn't work out anymore with us. We were not seeing each other anymore. It didn't look like I was caring for her anymore. I was always PhoneJoy here, PhoneJoy there. And I was really just putting my business before my personal life. And it was really upsetting for her. And it really caused a lot of pain for me and confusion at the same time, because I knew I had to get to these investors. Like, I couldn't deal with it right now, and it was just a terrible situation. And so I had to leave. I had to go all the way here to Cyberport to meet my investors, and I had to basically. They knew already about the situation, but when you discuss it via phone, it never really works out. So we had this meeting in person. I talked to them that we were running out of cash, we needed to raise money, and they didn't agree with me. They thought like I was wasting my time trying to raise money. They were like, I should focus on the product development and marketing the product. I was like, how can I do this if I know that we won't have enough cash to do it? And this really led like to a big conflict between investors and myself. And this leads me back to the very first mistake that I did. We were first-time founders, and it was very hard for us to raise money in the beginning, especially for hardware, because it's very cash sensitive. You need a lot of money to develop a prototype, to produce inventory. Product development usually takes longer than for software because you can't push it through the App Store like within 2 or 3 months. So it actually took us quite some money, and we had to give away 50% of our equity. So we had a typical 50-50 split situation, which is terrible, very terrible. And we had this conflict, and there was very few resolution to it. Because like I was faced with either agreeing with them, which was that I was to step down within 2 months' time as the CEO, or alternatively, I could have tried to buy them out, but then I would have had to risk everything. I would have had to risk that we wouldn't be able to deliver the product in time. I would have to risk that the company would die before I could even resolve this conflict. So I basically took the bullet. I had to step down, because this was the first moment in time when I realized the company is no longer my baby. Like, I have a responsibility as well, like to not only my investors, but also to my customers, to my employees. And yeah, so I kind of had to make this call, and it was a very difficult one for me. And the next 2 months, when I was basically doing a handover to a new CEO, I went into denial. I didn't see like what was wrong, like why did it come to this? Why did I fail? Like Jeffrey was talking about it earlier, like we were having all this vanity traction, right? I mean, we got a lot of press mentions. Everybody told us like we had like this great idea. It was going to be the next $1 billion idea, and everything seemed all right. We got into Cyberport for the incubation program. It looked fantastic on the outside, but on the inside, there were a lot of things that were going wrong. And at that point, though, I didn't want to have it. I was like, this can't be happening to us. Like, we were supposed to succeed, but we didn't. And I just couldn't grasp it. And I went into anger. I cast a blame on everybody but myself. I was blaming the investors for screwing me over like this. I was blaming my girlfriend for not understanding my situation. I was angry with my co-founder because I thought he was not technically apt enough to manage the production. We had delays in our product development. We had production costs that was too high, and that caused cash flow problems. So I thought like, everybody else screwed me over, and here I was. Why do I deserve this? And I was still working for PhoneJoy. I was still the founder, and I was running the business development, which made it even more so tough. Because on the outside, I had to represent PhoneJoy. I had to be like, everything is going well, we are really successful, and we just launched a product, and it's a big success. But on the inside, I knew there was a lot of things going wrong, and I was torn up. And it got me really depressed because I couldn't share this with anyone besides maybe the closest in my family. And it was a really upsetting experience for me because I put all this effort, all this sweat and blood into the startup, and everything was going downhill, and it felt like I couldn't do anything about it anymore. So at one point, almost during this summer, I spoke to my investors, and I was like, this is going nowhere. There's no strategy, and the new CEO doesn't know what he's doing. And it feels like there's not really a place for me anymore because I have no control over my baby anymore. It's like my ugly stepchild now. And there was no resolution to this, so I had to call it quits. And a lot of my friends, they came to me, wait a minute, you're the founder of the company, how can you quit? Like, what's wrong with you? And I thought a long time about doing this, and it was a really hard decision for me to do. And in the end, I actually was very happy about it because it allowed me actually in the first time in 2 years' time to take a vacation longer than a week. And it allowed me to actually take that step back and look at the mistakes that I did. Because when I finally had the time to think about my mistakes, I realized that everything kind of led back to me. I didn't vet my investors well enough. We only had a few meetings. We were desperate for cash. So we never agreed on how we would be dealing on a day-to-day basis. We were agreeing on the vision, yes, but we didn't agree how I was going to report to them, what their expectations were for me. And because of that, a lot of miscommunication happened throughout these 2 years. And I think nobody of the two sides was really happy in this relationship. But we were in it, right? We had this 50-50 split. It was like a bad marriage in a way. And it's even more tough, to break up a marriage with an investor than, a real marriage with your wife. And that was definitely one of my mistakes. I also was a terrible leader. I didn't really set meaningful milestones. I didn't keep enough check on my employees. I didn't set right metrics to evaluate my employees. I didn't give them the feedback that they needed to perform well. There was a nice company culture to it, but the productivity wasn't as good as it could have been. At the same time, I didn't get mentors on board early enough. A lot of mistakes I could have avoided if I would have just gotten the right people on board to give me the right advice. Because obviously a lot of the mistakes, like the 50-50 split and these kind of things, I could have avoided them easily if I would have talked to the right people up front. But early on I was a first-time founder, so I felt like this little guy who didn't deserve any advice because these guys, they were busy with their own thing. Like, how could I talk to them? Because I didn't have the balls to do it. What else? I also wasted too much time doing the wrong things. I wasted a lot of time with what Jeffrey refers to as startup entertainment. So I actually spent too much time networking. It doesn't really help you in Hong Kong if you don't have the product yet. If Hong Kong is not your main market, it's a waste of time. And I wasted a lot of time doing this. And I also wasted time attending conferences when it wasn't the right time for us yet to sell the product. So this definitely wasted a lot of time and money on our side. So it's actually led me to change. I reflected a lot on that when I joined the Founder Institute as a mentor, because in the Founder Institute, I don't know if you know about it, it's actually a pre-incubator. It's for first-time founders who have just an idea but not a product yet. And there's actually some great mentors now on board for the Founders Institute that share their experience when it comes to project management, product development, avoiding to hire the wrong people, and these kind of things. And during the Founder Institute, I actually could share a lot of this experience. And it actually gave me also a lot of ideas for Postmortem, because when I was presenting, all the mistakes that I did at PhoneJoy, I actually had some founders that talked to me like, wow, I wish more people would actually say more about the things that we should not do, because I always hear some people talking about their success and the things that they did, but it feels like these steps don't really apply to my business because I didn't have these connections. I didn't have their business model, and it felt very strange and alienating to them, whereas it was much more helpful for them to understand what they should not do. So right now I'm actually at this stage. I'm now the head of marketing for Ambilabs, which is an Internet of Things company. And I'm actually trying now to take back a lot of my learnings and improving the project management. I'm trying to set up the metrics to evaluate our performance. I'm trying to measure us by valuable milestones. And I'm trying to actually talk more to other founders, share some of the experience so we can actually learn from each other. Something that I didn't do at the time, which I still regret. And I don't know what the future holds for me. These learnings they don't just apply to startups. They're definitely available for all kinds of walks of life, I think. And so yeah, this is my story. Thank you. Yeah.
The question is about the investors, without mentioning any names. One investor, was it?
Actually, two.
Two. What kind of investor were they, and where they were from? Were they from Hong Kong, or you said they flew in? So what kind of, was it a VC? Was it angels?
They were angels, but they were like kind of like self-made billionaires from Russia, actually. So some of my friends actually tell me now, like, yeah, you can be happy that you're still alive, you know, like in Russia sometimes they throw you in the sea, you know. So yeah, so the problem was, this is a great question actually. I didn't actually get any references from these investors, so I only knew what business they were in and how they made their money, but I didn't vet them enough. Like, what were their portfolio companies? Have they invested in other tech companies? And that was a big problem because it felt like they didn't understand hardware, what it takes to develop products. So they had like completely different expectations, and it was really hard to meet these expectations. And yeah, so this is definitely something that I would advise any founder to do. Have like a very casual conversation as well with your investors. Talk not just about your startup. Try to figure out what kind of person they are. Try to ask them what kind of companies they've been investing in. Try to actually talk to these companies and see how they work with on a daily basis. And you also need to know, what expectations do they have? Do they want to talk to you every week? Do they want to be completely hands-off? What kind of metrics? What's their KPI? What do they want to know about your startup? Does it answer your question?
I've got a question for you. One or two?
Two.
Second one in the line.
All right.
So, first question. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
all the questions.
Thank you.
This one was sponsored by a General Assembly, which is all about learning, right? The rest of the questions are going to go, the rest of the books are going to go to the fire chat, so you have to say the question for that. Leo.
Hi, hello. Thank you for sharing, Martin. And I wanted to ask you, in that very tough situation where, things are happening both in business life as well as in personal life, what was it that gave you the resource or strength to come through this, what you depicted on the screen, where you actually did find strength and you found acceptance? What was the support that gave you that strength to get through that?
It's difficult to say. To be honest, the first months, as I was explaining, I really struggled, right? I mean, I was working for 2 years my ass off to make this one happen, this startup, right? Because it was my idea, my passion to run a startup, and then suddenly I had to give it away. And it felt like I lost like a part of myself, and that's why I went into this stage of depression, right? I was lost. It felt like I lost like a part of my life, and now I had to find meaning in my life again, because like I was like so deep into this startup that it gave me like almost 100% of the meaning of my daily life, and suddenly that was gone. And I think what gave me the strength was actually going out and sharing my experience, talking to other founders, and I actually discovered that a lot of other founders have been going through similar things, and I was really surprised. Like, I felt like I was alone out there. I thought, like this was happening to me, and it was unfair in the beginning, and I was doing all these mistakes, and it was so embarrassing about it, right? I felt like I really screwed up, right? I lost like a lot of money for my investors. I let down our customers. I let down our employees, and because suddenly this dream didn't happen anymore. But at one point, I just realized, that this doesn't have to be the end, right? I mean, there's more opportunities in life. Life doesn't end just because your startup has ended, and there's plenty of great people out there, and it's a big pond with many fish, and I'm sure there will be more opportunities for me as well, and that's why, I I got out of this. I can't really explain how and what was the deciding moment for it, but at one point I could really step away from it, and that was really the point when I left PhoneJoy, because when I was PhoneJoy, it felt like I was still running on a highway, no chance to look back, because like we were trying to make sales and everything. I was still in survival mode, right? And that was very unhealthy for me as well. Also physically, I gained a lot of weight during my time in PhoneJoy because of all the stress and all that. I was just terrible. So I'm glad that I got out in the end, to be honest.
Thank you.
Before we go to break space, one more question. Sorry, thanks.
Something a bit more specific. You know, I know from personal experience that you launched the product on Kickstarter. I just wondered if you kind of got anything to say about, you know, whether that was good or bad, or sort of did that lead things in the right direction or the wrong direction?
It was good, but I think we did it too early, to be honest. I mean, you've been one of our backers, right? And we had our fair share of delays because in the beginning, we were kind of cash strapped, right? We didn't get in the beginning enough investment, and we kind of wanted to make this work through crowdfunding, but we didn't really have too much of an idea what we're doing. Crowdfunding was still kind of new, and we raised, what, I think like $75,000 on Kickstarter, which was decent money, but for hardware, it's really just, you know, the tip of the iceberg. And what it was good for was giving us ideas, giving us customer feedback, you know, basically gave us more touch with customers, you know. You can do service, you can do focus groups, but they will never really help you as much as when you have people that put their real money behind your product, because these people are like the best believers in your product. But at the same time, in the product development stage, we weren't quite ready yet, because we were working with some of the wrong suppliers, because we also did our fair share of mistakes there. We worked with a Shenzhen partner, and they didn't deliver, and that threw us back by like 3 months. And then we had to start over, like for our Bluetooth modem, for instance. And that was a terrible experience as well. And it made me feel bad towards the backers as well. And this was also one of the decisions why I actually stepped down, because I really wanted to deliver this product. I felt this responsibility to our backers. Like, I couldn't just, you know, risk derailing the whole company, just, you know, keep, you know, my grasp on control. So, yes, I think crowdfunding is a great idea, but you need to know when is the good time to do it. Like, there's definitely some risk involved, not just for you, but I think also for backers. So if I was a backer, you also need to kind of evaluate at what stage is this company, what have they done, how far are they away from actually delivering the product.
Okay, good stuff.